It's Mountain Monday, and you know what to do. Breathe in. And out. And breathe in. And out. Those were extra deep breaths for me today because I'm breathing out the stress. I just finished the final Gamer's Guide to Feminism. I'm happy with it. I'm scared of it coming out. But the reason I'm like shaking off the stress is it was tough. It was a tough one to write. And, you know, I didn't do Feedback Friday this week, which is rare, and that really bothered me because I think the whole feedback process is important. I think having that back and forth is an important part of this channel, but like I said, something just had to give because I was really snowed under with this last episode. And it wasn't so much time, although there was some of that. It was psychological. There are times that it is important to absolutely be open to criticism. And there are times that you have to shut it out and you have to put your head down and you have to listen to your inner voice instead of all the other voices shouting at you in real life and on the internet and various other places. And, you know, I haven't been active on Twitter in a little bit. You know, I couldn't bring myself to go through the YouTube comments and end up in that space because I realized it was really disconnecting me from the thing I needed to access to finish that show. And when I was just doing the research and just sort of explaining concepts that weren't mine, I could do it and I could go through and read, you know, the lousy comments as well as the good ones because I was just explaining other people's ideas. Yes, there was my own commentary, but it was my interpretation of other people's stuff. The last episode was actually my suggestions, and I knew they were going to be controversial because everything on this topic is controversial. The minute anybody offers anything up, no matter how in good faith it is, things get crazy and things get nasty, and there are certain imbalances in who gets heard in the gaming community right now that are very scary. But I didn't want to quit. But the thing is, with facing the, you know, huge amounts of negatives, even though there are huge amounts of positives, you know, it's this funny thing that it's the way the brain is wired that one negative becomes much more relevant in your brain than positives. And depending on who you ask, it's a survival instinct that the negative stuff will kill you, the positive stuff won't. Just the sheer volume of response. I mean, when you get 125 comments and, you know, 100 of them are positive and 25 are negative, you're still reading 25 negative comments every day. So put that into perspective. It's 25 instances of somebody telling you not just that you're wrong, but you're bad every single day. Some people just disable the comments. And I understand why, but I don't want to do that because there's a lot of really positive things that come out of those comments. I just have to be resilient enough to sift through that nonsense and Loki barking constantly to get, it's like, you know, panning for gold. You sift through the sand and find those few shiny nuggets that are going to be worth a lot. I mean, the classic example of that was me asking you guys, what the hell's going on with this gameplay content, because it doesn't do very well, and people said it's the titles, and experimented with a few things, did some things, and it seems to be working better. This was one of the things I wanted to talk about in Feedback Friday. Like I said, I promised I would get to it, but it's building, it's good. I am hesitant. Here's the issue I have with talking about a topic over gameplay. The publicists of game companies that send me review companies review that material to decide whether they want to send me more stuff in future. And they don't give me those codes for me to talk about politics while playing a video game. They give me those codes to talk about their products. So I have to find a way to tie it into the game. And I mean, with Recore, it was great because of, my unified theory of daughters as fantasy girls. I mean, that, I didn't know how that was going to go over. And some people were blah, 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 angry. Other people were like, oh, that's really interesting. That really made me think. And that's the best compliment you can give me, when someone said you made me think. Because that's the goal. I've said a million times, well, probably not quite a million, but you know what I mean, hyperbole, that I don't expect anyone to agree 100%. And this is where I get stuck in comments, like the pit of despair from the Neverending Story. Was that the pit of despair or the swamp of despair? I forget. The one where Trey's horse drowned, and it was really sad. And back then, kids' movies were allowed to be sad because it was okay because it came back at the end. Spoiler! You get bogged down in it with all these people who are like, I don't agree, because I think about how many op-ed pieces and how many bits of information I consume. And I go, that, I didn't agree with everything, but that was interesting. That really made me think, that really challenged me. And to me, I like that, right? I don't have to, I don't expect to agree. And the number of people out there who think disagreement equals hit that dislike button, there's nothing you can do about that, but it really makes me afraid for humanity, because there are that many people who think disagreement equals dislike. I find it exceptionally boring. Could you imagine how boring conversations would be if one person said that and said, I agree, and someone else says something, I absolutely agree? It would, it's, those two, what are they, squirrels or chipmunks or something like that? And was it a Warner Brothers? Why, thank you, sir. Why, thank you. You first. Thank you very much. Those characters, it would be like that. I'm like, I don't want to live in that world. I want to be challenged. I want to, expand my horizons. And that means engaging with challenging stuff. But everything is so factional, and people feel like they need a tribe to be protected. And so everybody just falls into these ideological echo chambers. And the minute someone goes, let's look at this another way. No, that is anathema. You cannot look at something in a different way. You have to check the boxes of your ideology, or you will be, cast out of the tribe. And that's forsaking humanity to me. And so it makes me very depressed to encounter that on a daily basis, because I don't understand it. I don't understand people who are so afraid of a dissenting opinion. I don't. And that's what got me stuck. Because the entire purpose of progress, the reason I am going to bother recording a 20-minute video on, my suggestions for how to have a sane and respectful conversation about women in video games, is to offer something different. There is no point in me just regurgitating what other people have said. It is a waste of time. I would rather just refer people to their work, because otherwise you're essentially plagiarizing, right? You're taking somebody's ideas and passing them off on your own. So mine had to be original, and they had to come at it differently, and they had to come at it from a very intersectional perspective that is one part gamer, one part feminist, one part other things. And, you know, what I think makes that important is wrong, but what I think makes it useful is the word I'm going for, is that on its face may seem like a contradiction. And what I discovered was that there are quite a few parts of those two, you know, if you subscribe firmly to the ideologies or the philosophies, there are parts that come into conflict. And so I had to really look inside myself and go, how did I resolve these conflicts to be both in me? Because if I can figure out how I did it in me, then I can suggest how other people can do it. And it's not going to work for everybody, but it's going to work for some people. But obviously this crosses a whole lot of orthodoxies, because what I find on the internet tends to happen is when someone says, can you please not do that? Can you please stop that? Then it becomes this trial, this arbitration about whether the person had the right to ask you to stop. And that is such a violation of personal boundaries. That is so dehumanizing. And it's very hard to explain why something like that just stomps all over a person's individuality. It's tough. It's tough to be an individual. And I got into this trap of every time I tried to write something, it was, why the hell does anybody care what I think? This is an extreme act of arrogance. This is what I thought. Every time I tried to write down an idea, it's like, why would anybody listen to me? One faction thinks I am literally the devil. Another faction thinks I'm some sort of secret agent plus, you know, snake oil salesman. What's the point? There is no constituency inclined to listen to me. I am speaking into the void, and I had to make sure it wasn't just because of my own ego, because I don't do that. I don't think that good ideas come from a place of ego. Good ideas come from a place of respect, and they come from a place of authentic passion for something outside yourself, not the quest for validation for yourself. And that's a huge thing, because everybody needs validation. But the prime motivator in what I do can't be for everybody to just tell me how great I am. Because I've seen people who that is a motivation, and that is expected of the people around them, that everybody tells them how great they are. Because I know what happens. Everybody tells them how great they are, and they don't really mean it. But it seems that unless there is the inherent expectation that everybody tell you how great you are, not enough people tell you that you have value. And this is something that I don't know what to do about other than just lead by example. You know, focus on the things I think are really great. And yeah, be critical of things, point things out, but point things out from a place of, oh man, so many parts of this were so good that if you could just do this the next time, you know, but all this is great. Like, this is awesome, and this is awesome, and this is awesome, and this is awesome. And this is the objectivity that I keep hearing people ask for. But the problem is when you do it, it's not rewarded. The problem is if everything isn't 10 out of 10 or 0 out of 10, there's somebody who's going to complain that you didn't hit one of those extremes. The other thing about gaming is that, and this is true of any geek thing, but especially gaming because of the way it works structurally, the way the industry works. If we don't be honest about what we think didn't work in the properties we love and buy, then the developers are not empowered to fight the publishers to do that. If we just say everything's great, and then the publisher goes, well, it works, so do it again. The only way they give the developers the leeway to improve is if they get really spanked on a particular point. You know, you need to be critical so that a developer can go, you see? to the publisher. And so it has to come from that place of, I'm telling you this to help you, you know? And I don't feel like a lot of the criticisms online come from that place. I don't feel like they come from, I'm telling you this to help you. I feel like they're coming from that place of, I'm doing this to destroy you. And sometimes it's really hard to tell whether someone is saying something to help or saying something to hurt. Because a lot of people aren't very good at giving constructive criticism. The sandwich method seems to be out the window. And I'm sure you can imagine that all of this is exceptionally exhausting. And so I just had to shut it all out and play a lot of Tropico 4 while my brain cramped. Because I was locked up. I mean, I rewrote this thing 5 times. And that's conservative. It's probably more than that. It's 5, I remember. Trying to find a structure that made sense and trying to figure out, okay, which hardballs can I defend? Which hardballs can I stand by? And which are just my pet peeves? Which are actually helpful and which are just the things that are personally distasteful to me? And which are the things that I feel are actually going to be helpful for large numbers of people instead of just making, you know, my personal set of attributes more desirable than somebody else's? That completely defeats the purpose. And it was really hard. And, you know, factor that in with the, why the hell should anyone listen to you? You're who? And at the end of it, you know, I realized once it started flowing, it's like, oh yeah, I'm not facing insults on a daily basis. What? And, you know, criticisms and insults are different things, obviously, right? And, you know, I am not facing people actively trying to dehumanize me on a daily basis. This is great. But the problem is that in order to shut that out, I had to shut out all the positive feedback as well. And that's the part that sucks. That's just the nature of the business. It's the nature of this sort of work. It's, you know, you have to balance. You have to go in for it for a while and then come back out and figure out who you are and you want to say, and then go back into it because you have to promote. And you guys know I'm terrible at promoting. That's why I get so frustrated when people call me a shill, because I wish I was better at it. I wish I was better at the self-promotion, but I'm not. When you grow up your whole life being told the things you like are weird, and I was getting the double, it's, you know, these are weird, but they're especially weird because you're a girl. You know, that impacts you. And it almost seems like all the stuff I like is stuff I'm not supposed to like. And I am walking cultural appropriation in a lot of ways. The food I like is not allegedly my culture. The music I like is not allegedly my culture. The clothing I like is not allegedly my culture. But when is it allowed to just be something I like? The culture I grew up in, and that's by definition your culture, was not an ancestral culture. It was a culture defined by socioeconomic bracket. And so I had to get to a place to say, who the hell do you think you are? To say, who the hell do you think you are? And that's very confusing, but that's sort of the point. We'll leave it sort of there, make it kind of zen. Turn it around on the haters. So we'll close off now. Breathe in. And out. And breathe in. And out.